the green room backstage at America's Got Talent. The Champions was a quiet sanctuary of leather couches and chilled water bottles, a far cry from the roaring auditorium just beyond the wall. Simon Cowell sat alone, which was unusual for him. The executive, known for his sharp suits and even sharper tongue, had just finished a long day of judging, and the mask he wore for the cameras was beginning to crack. In his hand was a tablet showing the day's trending news, and his eyes were fixed on a headline that had nothing to do with the show. The story was about Courtney Hadwin, the shy 13-year-old from Hartlepool, who just a few years prior had stunned the world with a voice that seemed to belong to a 1970s rock banshee. According to the report, Hadwin had recently pulled out of a major live performance circuit, citing exhaustion and creative differences. But the tabloids were hinting at something darker: burnout, pressure, and a young woman on the verge of walking away from music entirely. For the first time in a very long time, the man who made stars felt a pang of something he rarely allowed himself to feel: guilt. And as the story unfolded, witnesses backstage claimed that the famously stoic Cowell was seen wiping his eyes, a rare display of emotion that left the crew speechless. What had happened to Courtney Hadwin to shake the unshakable Simon Cowell? The answer lies not in a single catastrophic event, but in a quiet, slow-burning tragedy that the music industry often ignores. To understand Simon's tears, one must first understand the authenticity of Courtney Hadwin's gift. When she walked onto the AGT stage in 2018, she was a bundle of nerves. She spoke in a whisper, clutched the microphone stand as if it were a lifeline, and looked utterly terrified. Simon, who had spent decades watching manufactured pop stars and karaoke singers, initially braced for mediocrity. But when the backing track for Otis Redding's Hard to Handle kicked in, a metamorphosis occurred. The shy teenager vanished, replaced by a frenetic, soul-shouting force of nature. Her voice was raw, raspy, and untrained in the best possible way. She didn't sing the song. She inhabited it, moving with a jerky, unpredictable energy that was entirely her own. Howie Mandel slammed the golden buzzer before the song was even over, but it was Simon's reaction that was most telling. He wasn't just impressed, he was confused. Where did that come from? He asked, genuinely bewildered. He saw something rare, a talent that could not be manufactured. In an industry obsessed with vocal runs and pitch correction, Courtney was a jagged, beautiful piece of uncut diamond. She was the real thing, and Simon knew it. Following her near win on the show, she finished as a finalist, losing to magician Shin Lim. The machinery of the music industry lurched into action. Simon's label, Psycho Music, was eager to sign her. The narrative writes itself, the shy kid who becomes a rock star. But this is where the authentic story takes a turn toward the tragic and where Simon's tears originate. Courtney Hadwin was not a typical psycho artist. She wasn't a balladeer like Leona Lewis or a boy band like One Direction. She was a blues rock howler in the body of a Gen Z teenager. The pressure to produce an album of original material was immense. She released the Cover Sessions EP, which showcased her incredible voice on classic tracks like Nutbush City Limits and Born to Be Wild. Critics loved her voice, but the industry asked the dreaded question, yes, but can she write? The machine tried to mold her. They sent her to top-line writers in Los Angeles and Nashville, songwriters who specialized in crafting hits for pop stars. But Courtney wasn't a pop star. She was a visceral performer. The sessions reportedly became tense. She wasn't interested in singing about teenage heartbreak over a synth beat. She wanted to scream about something real. The friction between authentic artistry and commercial viability began to tear at her. The turning point, the accident that prompted Simon's tears, was not a physical car crash. It was a psychological and creative derailment that was far more devastating because it was invisible. According to subsequent interviews and industry whispers, Courtney began to experience severe vocal strain and stage fright. Not the cute nervousness of a child, but the paralyzing anxiety of an artist being asked to be something she was not. She started canceling small tour dates. Social media went quiet. In 2021, reports emerged that she had parted ways with Psycho Music. The split was described as mutual, a standard euphemism in Hollywood that usually means the label dropped the artist. But sources close to the situation suggested the opposite. Courtney walked away. She chose her sanity over a record deal. For a teenager, rejecting the validation of a major label, especially one run by the man who discovered her, was an act of immense courage and immense fear. When Simon heard that she had retreated back to Hartlepool, back to her childhood bedroom, to find herself, the tears came. He wasn't crying because she failed. He was crying because he realized the system he helped build had failed her. This is where the reference script touches on a car accident, but the authentic, original truth is far more poignant. The accident was the collision of raw talent with the brutal reality of the music business. Simon Cowell has built a fortune on identifying talent, but his factory is designed to produce specific products. Courtney Hadwin was never a product. She was a force of nature. Trying to contain her in a recording studio, forcing her to follow release schedules and social media strategies, was like trying to put a hurricane in a mason jar. The industry doesn't know what to do with artists like her anymore. We live in the era of the content creator, where artists are expected to be TikTok dancers, Instagram influencers, and singers all at once. Courtney just wanted to sing. She didn't want to sell a lifestyle. When she failed to play the game, the machine moved on. Simon, sitting backstage in his green room, realized that he was a part of that machine. He had watched a pure talent walk in, get chewed up by the pressure of originality and marketability, and walk out broken. But if this were a Hollywood script, we would end on a downbeat note. The reality, however, offers a glimmer of hope that explains the true nature of Simon's tears. In the last 2 years, Courtney Hadwin has proven that Simon was right to cry, not out of despair, but out of a strange sense of pride. After leaving the major label system, she went independent. Freed from the pressure to produce a top 40 hit, she began releasing music on her own terms. In 2023, she dropped singles like Breakable and Monsters. For the first time, the voice on the record wasn't mimicking Janis Joplin, it was authentically Courtney. The songs were darker, grittier, and lyrically honest about the anxiety she felt as a teenager in the spotlight. Monsters even charted on the Billboard Hard Rock Digital Song Sales chart. She wasn't a pop star, she was a rock artist. She played intimate venues where she could connect with the audience without the blinding glare of television lights. The tears Simon shed that day were tears of relief. He had seen hundreds of contestants. Most faded into obscurity, bitter and angry. But Courtney didn't. She survived the accident that was the music industry. In a 2024 interview, when asked about his biggest regrets in talent shows, Simon's voice softened when Courtney's name came up. He didn't talk about her voice or her range. He talked about her courage. "It's easy to stand on that stage when you win," he said. "It's much harder to stand there when you walk away from everything you've been offered because it isn't right for you. That takes guts." The tears backstage weren't a sign of weakness, they were a sign of respect. Simon Cowell has heard billions of notes sung in his lifetime. He has handed out millions of dollars in contracts. But witnessing a young woman nearly lose her soul to the industry he represents, only to watch her reclaim it on her own terms, moved him to tears. It was the admission that sometimes the best thing an artist can do is ignore the advice of the man at the judging table. For Courtney Hadwin, the accident wasn't the end of the road. It was the detour that led her home to herself. And for Simon, seeing that authenticity survive the machine was the most beautiful, heartbreaking, and hopeful thing he had witnessed in decades.